the unquestioning support for Israel has been turned into part of the American culture. It's been made that way deliberately, and I think that for as long as the people who go on with their daily lives and not pay too much attention to this, then all discussions fell back on, oh, Israel is our ally, it's the only democracy in the Middle East, we support Israel, and that's just how it is. And then every so often there will be some skirmish, Israel doing their mowing of the lawn and so on, that would kind of come to the fore again. But you know, it was like a short thing. The mainstream media would immediately rush out with justifications, with apology, with renewed claims of, oh, we all support Israel, that's who we are, that's what it is. And it was almost like a constant of the US society, was part of the culture. Now we are 2 years almost into a completely ruthless, unhinged, barbaric, criminally insane genocide by the Israelis over the Palestinians. And that cannot be ignored, particularly because we no longer depend on just mainstream media. We have the social media where people share real information, including the most gruesome aspects of this operation in Gaza, which includes mass starvation of people and deliberate targeting of little children, which is unbelievable, which I think cannot escape people's attention. It's hard not to look at it. It's hard not to think about it. It's hard not to discuss it. So it's going around, and I think that it's been kind of piling up dry tinder for some kind of a reaction. And I think that the spark was finally ignited in a big way with the Charlie Kirk assassination. And so now I think a large segment of American society, it seems to me more than a half, among young people, it's the vast majority, they are inclined to see Israel as a rogue state, and Benjamin Netanyahu as an evil war criminal. And so as soon as there's even a suspicion that Israel or Benjamin Netanyahu or Israeli supporters in the United States might be behind Charlie Kirk's assassination, they're inclined to believe that. And now that's become almost a fact in the court of American public opinion. It doesn't matter what the facts are, but people already have certain beliefs that are going to be very, very difficult to dislodge. So what to make of that? I think it's a good thing in the sense that it will make it possible for Trump to disentangle his administration and himself from support from Israel. But then there are other worrying signs, because what we learned from this Charlie Kirk assassination, particularly the very, very courageous reporting by Max Blumenthal in the Gray Zone, that White House sources say that the administration is overrun by Zionists. Trump's chief of staff used to work for Benjamin Netanyahu, which I find absolutely unbelievable, but apparently that's a fact. And that Trump is actually afraid of them, that he's afraid of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Zionists because he feels that there's a risk of his own assassination if he wobbles on support for Israel. I don't know if that's true, but I believe that it is, because you and I have been talking about this for months. In observing Trump, I never got the impression that he's genuinely and sincerely friendly to Benjamin Netanyahu and, unconditionally devoted to the security of the state of Israel. I always thought that if I were a Zionist, I would not trust Trump. I would be very suspicious of him. And we'll see what happens. We'll get a measure of Trump over this issue. But I think that the current state of things, which is American people making their mind up that they no longer want the United States involved with Israel, that they no longer want American treasure squandered on Israeli genocide. I mean, Israeli genocide of the Palestinians, and that this will enable Trump to slither out from this commitment. We'll find out if he does it, but I suspect that if Israel renews an attack on Iran, and they strike the first blow rather than the Iranians, that there's a good chance that the Americans will stand aside. And so this hugely changes the situation in the Middle East, not to mention the formation of new alliances and the flow of new weapons towards Egypt and towards Iran. So the situation changed even from last summer's 12 days war until today, in favor of let's call it the axis of resistance, and to the detriment of Israel.
Alex, I want to talk about the situation in the Middle East, but before going there, with the memorial of Charlie Kirk, you see a huge division, a huge gap between two sides of this story. One side says, we have to see what has happened. What was the main reason of this assassination? Who was behind it? And the other side, which is the official, you see the head of FBI, you see Donald Trump himself saying this guy was responsible. He was not connected with anyone else, and he did it because of his partner, his transgender partner, which the communication you saw between the two, it was somehow in more than 50 years old. Those young people don't communicate the way we saw. And oh my love, what I'm gonna go there and describing each and every detail. And FBI coming out and saying how this guy was changing his outfit over and over, and which make no sense to the people. And here is what Tucker Carlson said, that is a huge concern on the part of these people who are criticizing the administration.
He was a Christian evangelist. And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I could just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Everything is inverted.
He's trying desperately to tell the administration it doesn't work this way. He's trying to send a message not to those people who are on the other side. He's trying to send a message to the people on his side that this is not the way to treat this sort of problem. You have to find the roots of these problems.
Yes, I agree, Nima. And to me, this is an indication that there's a group or a network of people at the heart of the administration or allied to the administration, which take a much more constructive, pro-American, pro-Republican. By that I don't mean Republican as in Republican Party, but meaning the devoted to the traditions of the American Republic as a reaction to the excesses and abuses of the British Empire, and people who want to return the United States to these traditions, who see and interpret these crucial events we witness today with more clarity, and who express themselves more truthfully and more sincerely. And it seems to me that they speak for those parts of the administration that cannot and dare not speak openly like this, or who are opportunistically in the administration waiting to stab Trump in the back, or to mislead him, or to, as the British used to say, the Trump whisperers there who stuff his head with lies and nonsense to cause him to change his mind on certain things. And so I think that this other side, where you find Tucker Carlson and some other people, are trying to pull the other way. I don't know what to make of Trump himself, because his latest, not only statements, but also policies are so all over the map that, as our friend Larry Johnson says, is Trump crazy like a fox, or is he just plain crazy? And, I always used to think I'm about 60-40 in favor of Trump. But I think that the last week moved me to about 51-49. And the reason why I'm still 51% in favor of Trump is because some of his statements and policies are so outright bonkers and insane that I have a very hard time believing that they are for real. I always think that this has got to be some kind of a stupid diversion. This must be misdirection. He can't possibly mean what he just wrote here. And then the more I think about it, the more I think, no, it really is that crazy. He can't. So I go back to something you and I discussed way back in March, when Trump launched Operation Rough Rider, when he started bombing the Yemenis and saying like, oh, we're going to bomb them like nobody's ever seen before. They've been bombing them for 10 years, since 2015, like nobody's ever seen before. It didn't make any difference. And now you're going to do that same thing, thinking that something's going to change. And I thought, either this is a diversion, or somebody got to Trump, back again with the discussion that he fears certain people around him, like the Zionists in his ranks, who might assassinate him. That could be part of the story. Or maybe he's not even afraid that they were going to assassinate him. It's enough that they threaten members of his family, that they say, you do as we say, or, you have a lot of children and grandchildren. It would be a shame if something happened to them. Or, if we say, well, he's pushing 80, and maybe he's not as bright and sharp as he once was. So, there could be a lot of different explanations for what's going on, and I don't think we can know for sure which one is it. But I'm very thankful that there are bright and courageous people out there that are gaining more and more and more traction in public, like Tucker Carlson, like Max Blumenthal, like Judge Andrew Napolitano with all his interviews, like your channel, and so forth. And so that the real discourse and the truth is finally flooding into the public, And I think that ultimately, if this, I think, tsunami of change in public opinion continues, that Trump will have no choice but to bend to the will of the American people. And then, we won't have to worry about whether Trump is, control a position, whether he's been blackmailed, whether he's losing his mind. It's going to be the way the American people will it to be.
Yeah. Alex, we had the head of Qatar. He said that in his view, Israel, they don't know how to deal with Israel, And he said they visit our country, plot to attack it. They negotiate with the delegation and plot to assassinate the members of the negotiation teams. Is this not the definition of a rogue government? He's asking at the UN. And Alex, it doesn't end this way, because what Tucker Carlson and these people are talking about is not just about Tucker Carlson, about all countries. You look at the Middle East, those people who yesterday were some sort of ally to the United States are coming out and saying, so what else Israel would do? They're going to attack, they're going to kill all of us together. And recently, Naftali Bennett had an interview. He was talking about what is the plan on the part of Israel. And here is what he said. It's so much concern. It's unbelievable what he's putting out.
You have the General Assembly resolution calling for a two-state solution. Are you not taking any of this as a sign that the rest of the world doesn't agree with you anymore?
Oh, no, I'm very cognizant of that. But in terms of our international position, look, it's tough. But I'd rather have my children live and be unpopular than have them killed and be beloved in the world.
There is no end for these guys. He's not even in the camp. He's not even in the same party of Netanyahu. He's not in the government. He's somehow criticizing the government for some sort of domestic policies. But they're totally aligned when it comes to the foreign policy and what Israel is doing.
I think this is a paranoia. I think this is some form of a psychosis that the Israelis collectively drove themselves into, because the only way they can feel safe is if they kill everybody who might even potentially become their rival or a threat to them. And so today they are in very large numbers. They're talking about, in fact, killing little children is justified because they might become grown-ups and become jihadis and Hamas terrorists against us. By the way, I don't think Hamas are terrorists. I'm just paraphrasing them. And they're going to come for us. So if we kill them now, that's a good thing. So we're just, but imagine if Palestinians or anybody else was using that same line of logic. If they said, well, it's perfectly fine and nice to kill Jewish and Israeli children because they might grow up to become IDF soldiers who are going to then abuse and brutalize us in our homes and in our lands. Of course, this would be completely unacceptable, but in their psychosis and their paranoia, the Israelis think that they're completely in their right to do whatever they want. So, that obvious, that would be like if I were brutalizing all my neighbors around here, because I think some of them might eventually want to hurt me. And so I hurt them before they can hurt me. That's, in an ordinary society, you would consider somebody like that either as a prison material or as a lunatic asylum material. And I would be put away if I was behaving like that. But I think that what's important to recognize here is that the whole Zionist project is much, much bigger than Israel itself. I think that Israel is the tip of the iceberg. The whole project is extremely extensive, and it's going through all the centers of power in the Western societies. in particular, again, London and Washington and New York and so forth. And this also was partly revealed after the Charlie Kirk assassination, because, again, as Max Blumenthal revealed, there's a whole network of billionaires in the United States who are loyal to Benjamin Netanyahu. And they're loyal to him in a very strange way, almost as though they were made to serve that role. And one of them is Larry Ellison, which I didn't really realize. But as it turns out, and then this all got drawn from through the internet, his various statements over the preceding years, turns out that he's a fanatical Zionist, and that he is one of the biggest donors to the IDF, which is a very strange for a tech billionaire. If you just kind of started your business and became successful, and you made a lot of money, there are many causes you could support in life rather than a military in someplace half around the world, right? And so that's a very interesting thing, because I've also heard recently Larry Ellison in one of these forums, I don't know if it was like a Michael Milken forum or a World Economic Forum in Davos, something like this. He was talking about how all these control matrix technologies are going to ensure that everybody's on their best behavior, meaning, he's completely on board with this World Economic Forum agenda of putting us under complete control and surveillance, so that we can't really do anything. We can't protest. We can't even criticize. We have to, be up to date with our vaccine schedules and the boosters and everything. And so this is all part of the same thing. And then, Larry Ellison also features in an investigation that I have done myself over the, on the subject of the company called Theranos, which I don't know if you'll remember, but Theranos was about 20 years ago. It was a really big deal. It was a company run by a very young American woman called Elizabeth Holmes. And Elizabeth Holmes was supposedly the inventor of some kind of a revolutionary diagnostics device, which could accurately diagnose something like 120 different diseases from just a little droplet of blood taken from your finger. Well, I looked into that, and the whole thing was a fraud from day one. The technology never worked. She was never qualified to run it. The whole thing was an extremely bizarre Silicon Valley bubble that crashed from the valuation of $9 billion to zero in a very short time. But the curious thing is that Elizabeth Holmes's mentor and one of her biggest financial backer was none other than Larry Ellison again. And her entire board of directors were people from the security state, nobody from the medical field. It was people like Henry Kissinger, sorry, the name escapes me, but there was General Mattis, George Shultz, Sam Nunn, who was head of the Armed Services Committee in the Senate. So very, very powerful people in the deep state, in the military-industrial complex, in the security state and intelligence services. Nobody from any medical or diagnostics field. And this girl had no clue about anything. And there you have Larry Ellison again, the arch Zionist. And then as I completed my investigation, it turned out that this whole Theranos thing was the preparation, very probably, it wasn't explicitly stated, it was very probably the creation of an information weapon for future pandemics that were going to be wielded against all of humanity everywhere around the world, because their objective was to be able to test 20% of the whole population weekly. So the Zionist Project, World Economic Forum, City of London, because Larry Ellison is also very close with Tony Blair, Mr. City of London, in addition to being close to Benjamin Netanyahu. And so this all seems to come together, and it always revolves around the very same cabal. And it seems to be a relatively small cabal, but they're extremely wealthy and they're extremely powerful. But as my investigation into Theranos proved, they're also extremely vulnerable, because truth tellers like Max Blumenthal, like Tucker Carlson and the like, Dave Smith, these people have the power to collapse them. And I've demonstrated that in the investigation of the way Theranos collapsed. It was this massive, seemingly invincible enterprise that collapsed because just a handful of ordinary people inside of the enterprise wouldn't shut up and continued to speak out and tell the truth, in spite of the fact that they were discouraged, intimidated, pursued, one of them to the point of committing suicide. But they prevailed nevertheless, and the thing collapsed. And I think that Theranos is the small fractal of the bigger structure that's going to collapse in the same way, because there are brave people, there are courageous people who are continuing to tell the truth. And then, Trump or no Trump almost doesn't matter at this point. I think that the tsunami has taken off, and it's uprooting the whole structure of lies that's been carefully constructed for us for decades now. I didn't even know I was going to say all that.
Alex, I think something was said during the interview of Tom Brock, which was somehow a warning sign for not the Middle East, but also for Russia, China, India, for all these players, for Iran. And here is what he said.
I was hoping you weren't going to ask that, because I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. Look, the end game, when we say peace, it's an illusion. There's never been peace. There will probably never be peace, because everybody's fighting for legitimacy. The end result is somebody wants dominance, which means somebody has to submit. In that part of the world, submit, there's no Arabic word for submit. They can't wrap their head around submit. So eventually, prosperity is the only answer.
The ignorance is so huge, because the word Muslim means to submit to God.
Yeah. Nima, can you remind me again who was this man?
Tom Brock, the U.S. envoy to the Middle East.
Oh, okay. Well, to me, he's a typical member of the empire's equestrian class, who is, knowledgeable enough to do what he's meant to do, to sell what he's meant to sell, and sufficiently ignorant not to doubt his role in the process. And so everything he said there, I see as part of his indoctrination. It's not even true at all. It's nonsense, but it justifies him, because he says, hey, either I'm on top or somebody else is going to be on top. So it's better I brutalize others than them brutalize me. It's practically the same mindset as what Naftali Bennett said in the little clip that you showed just a few minutes ago. And of course, this is part of the disease of the Western world, that we cannot conceive of a future that's different from what we're doing now. And we're doing it, and it's kind of almost working for us, because we plunder everywhere around the world. We bring this enormous wealth. We distribute it in a tiny circle of privileged classes, who then throw crumbs and small privileges to people like Tom Barak, right? And Naftali Bennett and people like Keith Kellogg and so forth, and they continue parroting the same nonsense because it's, if they understood what they should understood, they couldn't continue doing what they're doing. So it's like one of those sayings like you can't get a man to understand something if understanding it means that he will lose his job. But it's an ugly philosophy. It's a thoroughly ugly, godless, soulless philosophy that he has obviously embraced, and he is almost preaching it in a smug, cocky, self-assured way. But the more I hear of people like that, the more they seem to me weak, fragile, and lost. And I think that they will fall.
I think when we look at what he exactly said, Alex, 3 keywords in what he said: dominance, the people to submit, and prosperity. Look at the Middle East. Who is prosperous? The people who submit, the people who accepted the dominance of the United States, the West. Look at Europe. Is Europe powerful? Really? Is Europe powerful? Is Europe, do they have any sort of leverage on the United States? You talk about British and those elites in the United Kingdom. Those are not part of Europe, Alex. They're part of elites. They're not part of Europe.
Yeah, I would just push back. They're not part of elites. They're part of the parasite class. They're not even elites. They're inbred degenerates for the most part, who get off with pedophilia and drugs and all these ugly, horrible things. They're not elites. They don't write novels and compose symphonies and sculptures and build cathedrals. They just parasite off of the whole society, and then use that wealth that they suck off of the society to do completely depraved, degenerate things.
Yeah. And the problem with this sort of argument, Alex, is that those days are gone. Those days are not there anymore. When you see the Arab states coming out, when you see the new agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, you see I don't know if you saw the railway goes from Pakistan to Iran, then Turkey. These people are somehow, they're changing their mind. They see what's going on in the world, because Russia is not going to submit. China is not going to submit. India is not going to do that. Iran is not going to do that. And these countries are learning from what's going on in the East and what's going on, the momentum that BRICS is gaining. I think this is a huge game changer in the whole situation, that these people in power in the United States, as Tom Barak was talking about, they're still the same sort of mindset. That doesn't work anymore. And do you see the change coming to Europe? Do you see the change coming? I see what's going on at least in the Middle East. There's somehow, because of their life, the leaders in the Arab states, they're so much afraid of Israel and what Israel is doing. That may change their mind after all, to move toward the East.
I entirely agree. And the change is bubbling under the surface in Europe as well, but in a very powerful way. People are longing for traditional values. People are longing for safe neighborhoods, prosperity, good jobs, sense of security, and so forth. And they see that everything that is being done to them by this parasitic imperial class is actually turning them into serfs, into slaves. It's making their towns and cities and neighborhoods insecure. It's causing them to lose jobs. I will just give you 2 quick examples from my country, from Croatia. So the destruction of the livestock is off the charts, and they keep making justifications. Oh, there's this virus, now there's that virus, and they always have some kind of a reason. But the result is that they're destroying the livestock in tens of thousands of numbers. And so people are seeing, not only are the farmers being crushed and destroyed, the regions that cover the farmland in Croatia is being emptied out of population. And people ask themselves, why? What for? Why are you doing all this? And they're realizing that they're running out of food, that there might be a day when there's not going to be any food in the supermarket, and people are getting nervous. And then another example is the migrations. So there's an organized system of bringing migrants to Croatia. It's been turned into a business. People make money off of this. They go around the world and they recruit them, and then they bring them over. And then the government of Croatia subsidizes companies to employ these migrants. So let's say that so far the predominant migrants that came into Croatia have been Nepalese, then Indians. Now they're changing, and they say, okay, no more Nepalese and Indians. Now we're bringing in Filipinos, and so you have people going there and bringing people back. And so now, if I have a company in Croatia, the government subsidizes me to hire these people with 600 euros a month. So I get 600 euros a month to hire a migrant. And these migrants, they work for as little as 800 euros a month. So as a businessman, I get a free slave for 200 euros a month. So not free, but it's nothing. Yeah. And for some reason, our own government is doing this. And so what the Croatian people see, the Italian people, the German people, the French people, the Spanish people, they all see the same. And the anger and the revolt is gathering strength. And then you have these leaders like Friedrich Merz and Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer and the like, who are so extremely unpopular. They're really sitting on very thin ice. And so to stay in power, they're obliged to cancel democracy. They're obliged to interfere with people's will in every way conceivable, just to make sure that we cannot change course and that we cannot turn the situation around. But at the same time, I see that there are covert influences that are coming from the East. So apparently there are significant investments coming from places like China into European countries. And I cannot say this as a fact because I don't know, but it's just my impression and my judgment. They're not there just investing money and making business. I think that they're seeking to purge the system of these parasites, to help us overthrow them and take control of our own countries, because then with sovereigntist-oriented governments, we would be able to reorient the development of European nations away from these globalist structures and towards the multipolar integrations. We could begin to become part of the Belt and Road Initiative. We could be integrated in the SCO security structure and so forth. And I think that ultimately this is in the interest of places like Iran and China and Russia and Belarus and so forth, because rather than having flashpoints and crisis, this arch of crisis that's surrounding them everywhere, they would prefer to have peaceful, stable neighborhood. So I believe that this is being done, but we don't really know much about it in any effectual way. But that combined with the real, genuine grievances of European peoples, which are very, very significant and very heavy, are going to lead us to some kind of a change, hopefully peaceful change. But I think that there's a possibility that it's going to be a violent change, like a revolution type unraveling.
Alex, I don't know if you saw this graph here. It shows that the car manufacturer Porsche was excluded from the DAX index due to the collapse of the company's share. And this is part of the story of Europe. And we are talking right now about Germany, one of the, I think, the most important countries in Europe. And you said Merz, but these people, in your opinion, do they really care who's running Germany as long as they can get whatever they want to get from Germany? Because look at this picture, just how unbelievable is the picture. You see two guys, nobody knew who's gonna be, the head of self-appointed president of Syria talking with Zelensky. It's, the level of what's going on, it's somehow unimaginable. If you 3 years ago, we were talking about these two guys going to get together, you would say, who's this guy? Who's al-Shara? Right now, he's running Syria, and he's meeting with Zelensky. I don't see as time goes by, you see the connection, this line of connection, how they're trying to destabilize the region all over. You see, it's getting more bolder than before. And do you feel that somehow these people, I said about Merz, do they really care who's running, who's going to be the president of France, who's going to be the leader of, let's assume, the president of Germany, as long as they can get whatever they want to get from those countries in terms of the foreign policy, domestic policy, all of that?
No, of course they don't care. They just care that their agenda continues uninterrupted and unmolested. This guy that calls himself al-Shara now, used to be called al-Jolani, used to be head of al-Nusra Front, filmed himself chopping people's heads off. And now he's treated as an honored guest, shaking hands with the leaders of the free world. And his colleague in crime, Volodymyr Zelensky. It's incredible, but I think it's good in the sense that these things are becoming revealed. And, again, who created al-Jolani? It wasn't just the Turks. It was the British. As we know from our friend Vanessa Bili, Gaziantep, close to Idlib, is like MI6 Central in Turkey, coordinating Middle Eastern actions. We know that Tony Blair's, friend of Larry Ellison, Tony Blair's chief of staff, Jonathan Powell, was tasked with this transformation from head choppers to respectable statesmen. He's been, his company called Intermediate was charged with marketing of al-Shara and his foreign minister. I forget his name. I think it's something similar. Al-Assad al-Shibani. To put them in nice suits, to train them how to deliver the talking points, to look respectable, and to, kind of seduce the Western audiences, to feel good about Al-Qaeda terrorist head chopper now being in place of Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. But it's, as we realize this, we realize that these are all tentacles of the very same monster. And again, I like the metaphor of tsunami, because tsunami, before it hits, the water first draws out, it pulls away. And then as the water levels fall down, you see that all these tentacles connect to the very same monster. And I think that, you know, their whole shtick for all these centuries has heavily depended upon them concealing their hand, you know, acting in the shadow, making sure that the public doesn't recognize them. And so now that they are being drawn out into the open for everyone to see, I think that they are in jeopardy. And if it were only about the people, you know, the people of European countries, the United States and so forth, maybe they could still crush the rebellion. But it's no longer just the people, because there are now extremely strong rival powers like Russia, Iran, and China, who are not going to submit to them, who have understood how weak this monster is and how fragile it is. And I think that who have understood that this monster will never give up on doing what it does, this parasite, until it is completely crushed and destroyed. So I think that there's an awareness among the Russian leaders, among the Chinese leaders, and the Iranian leaders, at the very least, that they have to go all the way. You know, it can be, oh, we'll just take these few oblasts in Ukraine and then we're going to call it quits. I think they're going to have to continue, not militarily, but they're going to have to continue in diplomatic ways and illegal through legal means, to continue destroying this monster. And I think that now even those minor powers around the world that have willingly submitted because they got the little crumbs, you know, yachts in the south of France and apartments in London and Geneva and in Florida and so forth, they're realizing that they're not safe, that, you know, once this monster destroys their immediate rival, then they're next. So it could be MBS in Riyadh next, or it could be the Qatari government next, or it could be the UAE government next. These people are never going to stop. You know, they already said, once we change the regime in Iran, Pakistan is next. And Benjamin Netanyahu is already sharpening his sword for hurrah at China. He wants to destroy China. These people are completely pathologically insane, and they have to be taken out. But it's not just Benjamin Netanyahu. It's not just the people, the billionaires surrounding Trump. It's the whole thing that connects Ukraine, the city of London, the gutting of European democracies, the attack on Venezuela, you know, or at least the apparent attack on Venezuela, and on and on and on. It's everything.
It's not just Venezuela. They're talking about Bolivia. They're talking about,
yes,
you know, Nicaragua, and, you know, it's coming to the southern part of, into Latin America, and it's unbelievable what's going on. And Alex, when you look at the situation in Ukraine, you see two sort of signs. One says that you see European countries, those hawkish, they were among the hawkish people toward the conflict in Ukraine. They're somehow saying that they may find some sort of political solution for Ukraine. On the other hand, you see people are getting, like J.D. Vance, which I never thought that he's gonna talk this way, but he's somehow, here is what he said. That's so much confusing to me at this stage, after, you know, more than 7 months of his administration, and coming out and talking this way. What is the positive point out of these sort of thoughts for the administration? Here is what he said.
Is that he is responsive to the reality on the ground. And the reality on the ground is that, number one, we have engaged in incredibly good faith negotiations with both the Russians and the Ukrainians. And I believe the president is growing incredibly impatient with the Russians right now because he doesn't feel like they're putting enough on the table to end the war. That's number one. Number two, the president has grown very confident that this war is bad for Russia. You hear me say this all the time. You hear the president say this all the time. The war is bad for Russia. It's bad for Ukraine. It's bad for America. We want the killing to stop. That remains the president's position. But the president also can look at reality on the ground. He sees the economic numbers that are coming out of Eastern Europe. He sees the number of dead people, both Russians and Ukrainians, that are happening in that war. And the president is telling Vladimir Putin it is time to stop the killing. He would say that to Zelensky. In fact, has said that to Zelensky. He wants this war to end, and he's doing everything that he can to stop it. But look, if the Russians refuse to negotiate in good faith, I think it's going to be very, very bad for their country. That's what the president made clear. It's not a shift in position. It's an acknowledgement of the reality on the ground. We're going to keep on fighting for peace every single day in the Trump administration.
You know what's so ignorant about his take is that as though Russia's main concern is Ukraine. Russia's main concern is beyond Ukraine, is the whole situation of Europe. And these guys are not addressing the main concern, the main roots of the conflict. That's why I think we're on the path of the continuation of the conflict. And what's your take on that?
I can't really think of J.D. Vance's speech as anything more than public relations theater. You know, these are statements aimed at some public, at some, constituency there, maybe donors, maybe the military-industrial complex, maybe the bankers, maybe all of these people. It's disingenuous. It's not truthful. And so it leaves us again guessing what the administration's true intentions are. And again, my guess is 51-49 in favor of they do want peace with Russia. And they're going to get there in some kind of a roundabout way. While leaving everybody else guessing. I try to imagine, because, some things appear to have changed since Donald Trump's visit to London. And there he gave like a gushing speech to King Charles and his guests, who were all parts of this parasite class. And that speech could really be construed as an insult to the American Republican traditions. Truly an insult. Why did he do it? I don't know. Maybe someone got to him. Maybe somehow the Brits brought some kind of a world-class hypnotist there to say, from now on, you're going to be my servant and you're going to do as I say, or something. I have no explanation, or it's a deception, or it's an elaborate deception. But, words matter. You shouldn't tell lies, and you shouldn't desecrate the values and the heritage of your own nation's foundation, And Trump did that. So I thought that was very bad. And then from moving from that point on, he made some bad tweets. The things that worry me is, the new aggression against Venezuela, the seeming attempt to regime change Venezuela, and particularly the completely new thing that came out of the blue, which is, we want the Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan back. Why? In 2017, during your first term, you wanted to withdraw from Afghanistan completely. Now, after you had a chat with King Charles and Keir Starmer, you want Bagram back. And I do recall very vividly that when the Americans withdrew from Afghanistan, the British were absolutely hysterical about it. You know, the American discourse was, oh, it was a bungled withdrawal, but thank God we're done with that. In Britain, they didn't care about whether the withdrawal was bungled or not. The British were just completely vexed that the Americans left Afghanistan. And they had a whole series of speeches insulting the United States and Biden administration and all this because they felt betrayed. Why is Bagram so important? It doesn't seem that it's important to Trump because he wanted to withdraw already in 2017. It seems that it's very, very important to the British for some reason. I guess the reason is because from there, you know, they can then antagonize Pakistan, they can antagonize China, they can eventually even keep Iran in check and do all kinds of stuff from there. So, you know, if Trump continues to insist on going back to Bagram, then I'm going to have to flip from 51-49 in favor of Trump to somebody got to him, and this is a betrayal. Venezuela, I could explain that. I'm 100% certain that the pressure to stage a regime change in Venezuela is coming from the ranks of Wall Street, because Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserve, if you believe the official numbers. All the oil producing countries are lying about their oil reserves, but okay, let's say there's a lot of oil there, and then it doesn't matter if everybody believes that it has 320 billion barrels of oil reserves, then the financial markets are going to function on the basis of that. So 100% Wall Street wants to get a hold of those oil reserves because it would be able to fuel a massive new credit cycle in the United States, creation of brand new bubbles and whatever you want. So the pressure to regime change Venezuela 100% is coming from Wall Street. Trump can't resist that. So I can see it as an insincere attempt, you know, when you want to pass a test but you don't really want to study. And so you send a small fleet, 4,000 troops, you blow up a few boats, you know, punch your chest and play tough, but you know, you really have no heart for that project. He did that in 2019. You know, he did the motions of wanting a regime change in Venezuela. He recognized Juan Guaido as the legitimate president, and then he turned over the whole thing to John Bolton, whom he called a very stupid man, and to Elliot Abrams, the biggest flunky of the Iran Contras fame in the American deep state. So, you know, obviously that wasn't going to get the job done, and it didn't get done, and nothing happened in Venezuela. So he might be doing the same thing in Venezuela now, but responding to, I presume, British pressure to get Bagram back, that shocks me. And that is actually the first time in his administration that I don't know how to explain this, and the only explanation that kind of imposes itself is that it's a betrayal, actually. But let's see, you know, is he sincerely doing this, or did he just make some noise and then he's going to walk away from it again?